Evidence that my world is not full of what you might call coincidences cannot be denied. But I'll let you decide for yourself. I will only state one last time. This is the God's honest truth of what has taken place in my life in the real world. So, I start again, speaking of signs from God. I am not nor will I play the role of a Bible thumper. But I have been known to stab a Bible in the past. A number of times in the past I have demonstrated the power of the Bible in my Twilight Zone reality by stabbing a Bible and searching for the page in words at which the tip of the knife last penetrated a page. I would have whoever I was demonstrating this to find that spot in the Bible by holding up the pages to the light and let them decide which side of the page they wanted me to read from, front or back. These words always fit the circumstances surrounding us at that moment. One of the most incredible times was when Rita, a 52-year-old housebound woman I was caring for, found the spot and I read, "A hole in horses." I was quite taken by the fact that at the last page at which the knife blade had made a hole, the word "hole" appeared. Not to mention the look on Rita's face as she pointed to the horses on the television, which I was unaware of. She was watching Bonanza. Certainly many call these events in their lives coincidences, but this is clearly not the case in my life, as I'm sure many who know me would testify to. A Twilight Zone, as well scripted as anything Rod Serling ever wrote. I could, at will, bring people into my reality if I wished to, as long as I was aware of evidence that I myself was ahead of the flow. I call it phasing, for lack of a better word. One particular gentleman threatened me with bodily harm if I didn't stop what I was doing. I mentioned a song and it came on the radio. So he turned off the radio and turned on the television. So I went out for some cigarettes. When I got back I told him I had seen a pizza box lying upside down in the road and a dog sniffing around the box. So I kicked the box over so the dog could lick what might be inside. Well, much to both of our surprises, there was an entire pizza in the box, so the dog went to town. I could see that his reaction was not what I had expected to this cute little story. He replied, "I told you to stop it." He was now pointing to the television and the pizza commercial, in which the dog is attacking the pizza delivery man, was on the screen. There were many times when friends and people around me would be astonished at the fact that I would seem to be talking with a DJ, as I would speak to the radio and they would reply as if we were holding a conversation, even requesting songs and having them played. After years of journeying through the Twilight Zone, I realized that only the power of God could make such occurrences happen. One day I was zipping around the stations simply to use the words I was hearing, to make synaptic connections and create thoughts that might have never occurred to me otherwise. I hit the AM frequency band and I heard one man say to another, with panic in his voice, "He's at it again, just zipping around the frequencies." What? What? We were told that he wouldn't be monitoring these frequencies. What should we do now? It's too late, he's heard us talking about him. And then completely dead air. Years later, I had heard about the Truman Show, but had not seen it. When I did get a chance to see it, my only interest in seeing it was purely to check out the technology to do such a thing. When I saw the scene such as the moment that Truman hears on his radio, due to a frequency anomaly, he has just almost had an accident and nearly run over a woman. It was as though Jim Carrey was doing an impression of me, as I had reacted during my cross-frequency event. In a mere instant, all of the universal knowledge I had tapped into over the past 17 years became crystal clear, and one statement said it all. Now that I know the secret, there is nothing that I lack. Needless to say, I was now fully engulfed in the Twilight Zone, and a typical day consisted of the actual events that follow. For some unknown reason I was trying to remember the name of the movie in which the actor from the movie, The Karate Kid, had a guitar duel with the devil for a soul. At that moment I sat in the car I was working on, only to hear the song Crossroads by Cream start to play. It was an instant answer to my question. While walking across the shop toward the car with a drain tube in my hand, I snapped it like a whip. Changing the station, I heard bullwhips cracking from the song Southern Man. I asked a friend, "What song would you like to hear next on the radio?" He replied, "Rush." Dead air was coming from the radio between the song that had just ended and the one that was about to begin. Rush's song, New World Man, began to play. He knew me and this did not surprise him. "Thanks," was all he had to say. While pouring glue into a tube, I heard Phil Collins sing, "There's a hole in there somewhere." So I turned the tube around. Sure enough, there was glue leaking out of a hole. At home, I used an extension cord for my headphones so I could listen on the balcony. As I was exiting through the sliding glass door, at the same moment a short in the wiring occurred. Phil was singing, "I see your lifeline is breaking." While sitting at my typewriter writing my story, there were an unusually great number of times that I heard the word I was typing said on the television or radio. Not just small everyday words, words one might not say in an entire day's conversation. Sitting and listing the 3 songs I had listened to every day at lunch on the jukebox at a Pizza Hut in the year of the Tiger in 1975, they were Radar Lover by Golden Earring, Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple and Hypnotized by Fleetwood Mac. One by one, every one of these songs was played by the radio station I was listening to. While driving in my car, I looked at the clock. 10:33, which in Earth Code translates to, "Amplify Jesus." I turned on the radio and heard the words, "Jesus is just alright with me." The Doobie Brothers were right on cue. Then there was the night that the Rolling Stones were playing at Joe Robbie Stadium, which in the music world is known as Junior's Bar and Grill, a few miles away from my balcony. A local rock radio station was playing the Bridges to Babylon album at the same time they were on stage. Between songs, the DJ stated that there had been gate crashers at the concert. It was time to go out on the balcony and have a smoke, so I stepped to the railing and looked down. You're not going to believe me, but I saw a car that had just crashed into the security gate below me. It gets even better. Stranger. Later that night, while listening to another station playing a song from the Bridges to Babylon album, the song about calling the fire chief came on. I was staring at a car which had crashed into the median wall on the expressway below and that was now completely engulfed in flames. Occurrences were happening so frequently and so non-stop that goosebumps weren't appearing. At times it got so intense that I would have to turn off the radio because I did have to keep my feet on the ground and function in the real world. Countless more incidents occurred, too numerous to remember, but I would like to convey that they happened in a flow, moment after moment, hour after hour and day after day. There were a few particular events which nearly caused me to drop to my knees though. I was driving back to work after lunch. Sitting at a stop sign, I looked left, then right, then left again and straight ahead. As I drove forward I heard screeching tires. I looked left to see a yellow Camaro with its brakes locked up and sliding across the intersection in front of me. About 20 yards past my front end and to my right it settled to a stop. I sat there for several long moments and wondered if I was going to see backup lights and have a confrontation. But he drove off. I took a deep breath and considered that this idiot came flying around the corner to my left, which was about 30 yards away, and did not consider that someone or something might be around that corner. As he rode away and I drove slowly to the other side of the intersection, I intentionally turned on the radio to see the reflection of this event, certain that there would be one. I heard screeching tires that went on and on and on and then a crash. The announcer said, "So you think you're a good driver? Take the safe driver test tonight with Ann Bishop, tonight at 6 on Channel 10. I turned off the radio and drove back to work. The flow was so intense on one particular day that I just could not take it anymore. It just didn't seem to satisfy me and it held no answers as to why it was happening. It always seemed to lead nowhere, except helping others out of their alternative realities. I worked in a shop which always had at least 5 cars in it and everyone working on them had their radios turned on. I was fit to be tied, so I turned my radio off and actually taped the trigger to my air drill on, so I wouldn't hear anyone else's radio. Didn't work. From the far end of the shop I heard, "Since you've been gone, all that is left is a band of gold." I looked down at the ring finger on my left hand and my wedding band was not there. I trembled for an instant, jumped out of the car and ran over to the car a coworker was about to drive off in. He was taking it back to the owner. I opened the trunk and retrieved my ring. I had given him a hand earlier in the day in order to run one of the drain tubes for the sunroof into a wheel well. I had taken the ring off so I could fit my hand into a very tight space. Well, hell, it was when I realized that whatever the reason for this flow, it was a good thing. Without a doubt, the most detailed and intricate event occurred while I was at the end of an incredible journey into my twilight zone of synchronicity. This tour had again led to incarceration. But in this instance, it did not end with the awareness that I had gone a little too far and lost touch with the real world. Unexpectedly, being jailed did not mean an exit through the doorway. Realizing that God had placed me in this circumstance for a reason, I felt it necessary to share my experiences with others. The philosophy of the wall and it only being reflected light off of paint molecules was perhaps my best tool for connecting to the more enlightened souls and sharing these circumstances. Reading was a great way to pass the time. As I read out loud a particularly interesting sentence in the book I was reading, my bunkmate exclaimed that it was a fitting reply to what he had just read. Without hesitation or a plan, we went to the common area outside of our cell and proceeded to grab a handful of books each and sit at one of the steel tables. Each taking turns, we would place a finger within the pages and read aloud what it said. Consistently, time after time, what we were reading to each other sounded as if we were having a conversation. Sometimes it was a question, with an appropriate answer, others were the continuation of a thought. We did this for several minutes, both of us completely amazed at how incredibly intricate and detailed one another's replies had become. Then I read the words, "God sent us a cuckoo as a sign of his sanctioning our actions." At that very moment, coming from the television, a cartoon cuckoo popped out of its clock and announced to us it was there. We both cracked up, laughing uncontrollably. As I tried to catch my breath, I had to know what book this sentence came from. The book was about a pair of missionaries traveling down the Amazon. I wanted to read further as to the circumstances for such a statement, but a guard who was standing in our cell called to me. He wanted me to tell him what my friend and I were laughing about. I walked over to him with the book in my hand and proceeded to explain just what we had been doing. When I read the statement again, the cuckoo, once again, was right on cue. As he was laughing, I decided to see if he too could have followed us through the doorway. I asked him to pick up any two books of about 30 which were in a row placed on the floor against the wall. Having chosen two books, I told him to place a finger within the pages of the first book and read the sentence. As he fanned the page and pointed to words, I said, "Look and see what they say." To the amazement of both of us, he read, "Look and see." Now, being totally confident that a second demonstration could not fail, I told him to do it again with a second book. The words he pointed at read, "Open your eyes and see." All he could say was, "You've certainly opened my eyes." This one event truly strengthened my resolve to continue on the path God had chosen for me, regardless of any consequences my actions might have in the real world. Later that afternoon, this same guard pulled the microphone to his mouth and said, "Yes, Messiah." There was no sarcasm in his voice, but this only served to anger me. I yelled back, "Don't call me that." As in the movie, The Truman Show, I had a moment of perception that altered all reality. With my every action and thought being replayed in music and the words of others, be they live or through transmitted frequencies, you might understand why and how I might believe that I was being watched and monitored by DJs. Even so far as believing that perhaps they had a secured website and webcam with which to view my actions. Knowing that this was truly a delusion, if only for the reason that my thoughts could not cause others to react fast enough to answer a question or thought I had on my mind.